Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this already fifth module on geo-enabling the health information system. This series is hosted by the UNICEF East Asia Pacific Regional Office and Moru Tropical Health Network with support from TechNet. We'd be very happy to know who's with us today, so don't hesitate to introduce yourselves in the chat box. You can tell us your name, where you're from, and whatever you want to share. You can also use this chat box for any technical support. So if you encounter any issue, just let me know and I'll do my best to help you. If you have any question during the presentation, as usual with TechNet, please use the Q&A box. It's available at the bottom of your Zoom window. You can ask your questions at any time, and Steve will answer them whenever he can. Finally, this session is recorded. We'll share with you the links to the video as well as the slides by email and other relevant information as it can be necessary. I hope you'll enjoy this session, and I'll give the floor to Ridwan. Ridwan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alex. And again, welcome everyone. This is our fifth session or fifth modules from overall 6 on geo-enabling health information systems. We are happy to see everyone hopefully still very passionate to learn more. Again, I think this is very good opportunity for everyone to learn about this. So again, I'll go through all the overall objective of this trainings. Again, this workshop objective is to disseminate operational guidance material that can assist countries in implementing the geo-enabled process of health programs in general and the development of implementation of microplans in particular to demonstrate and potential of geospatial data technology in public health, introduce the HIS geo-enabling framework and its implementation in countries, transfer knowledge and expertise and resources that will allow everyone to implement the HIS geo-enabling framework in their respective country. So with this workshop, we are expected that participants will have a better understanding on the geospatial data and the technology that can bring to public health programs and how to geo-enable their health information system in a sustainable way to benefit from this type of data and technology. Again, I'm repeating again, but this is not about the GIS training. So I think without further ado, I'll hand it over to our deal facilitators, Steve, to leading us with all the topics for today. Thank you, and over to you, Steve.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome everybody once again to this fifth module of the training workshop. As usual, a few slides just to first remind you that indeed all the training material is available online in Google Drive folder, for which you have the link here on this slide and the QR code as well. I'll put also the link in the chat in 1 second for you to be able to connect to that material. Also indicates that the slides for today are already in this Google Drive. And actually what we have done now is also creating a web page from where you can have access to the slides as well as the recording for all the modules in one place. I also just put the link in the chat. And then also remind you about the glossary of terms where you will find definitions for all the main terms we are using in the context of this training. Alex mentioned about the different ways to communicate directly into the Zoom link, right? Using the Q&A, using the chat. We have also created a short Google form if you feel more comfortable to ask your questions in private. Basically, you can use this Google form to submit these questions to me, and I will answer these in between the modules or at the end of the whole series. So far, we have been able to answer all the questions except one that was very technical and for which we are still trying to find some answers. So I'll continue to liaise with the person in question. Don't hesitate, once again, also to use the chat to share any resources, any knowledge, experience you would like to share with everybody during the module. Before we look at the agenda for today, just a quick recap about what we looked at during the fourth module, which was an introduction to the geospatial data management cycle, right? We talk a lot about data availability, data accessibility, and above all, data quality, and how this cycle helps to basically reach such a quality. We then focused on some specific aspects of the cycle, more particularly those that are indeed setting the ground, right? The data specification and the ground reference and the terminology. So what forms the foundation of the whole process in order to reach the quality I was mentioning earlier. We look at metadata as well. And we went through what needs to be taken into consideration when compiling existing data, as well as identifying and filling the gaps that could have been identified through this process. Today, we are going to focus on technologies, geospatial technologies. I mean, we waited until the fifth module to do this. Those who have been online since the beginning know that what we are really trying to emphasize as part of this training is the importance of the content, of the people and the processes, and really having technology there to support the whole process, right, and not to drive it. So now that we have went through all these key elements, including the HIS Geo-enabling framework that ensure for these content, people, and then processes to be in place and sustain on the long term, we can enter and talk a bit about geospatial technologies. Normally today, we should not have a too long module. Hopefully we'll finish within the 2 hours that we have allotted here. Let's start with a short introduction about geospatial technologies, right? And starting with the definition, there is more than one geospatial technology. That's the first thing which is important. People tend to always say GIS, but GIS, Geographic Information System, is actually one of those technologies. There are other ones. That's why you very rarely hear me talk about GIS. When I talk about all these technologies, I always use the term geospatial technology. I mean, the other main technologies we are talking about here is the Global Navigation Satellite System, GNSS, photogrammetry, remote sensing, all of these technologies being there for acquiring, manipulating geographic data, creating geographic information, etc., etc. Important to mention also that there is new technologies that are emerging and starting to be deployed. And we will look at one of them today, which is the common georegistry, and that will be during the last session later today. The place of geospatial technologies in both the HIS Geo-enabling framework and also the geospatial data management cycle. So in the framework, you have technologies appearing first at the level of the second stage, and the slides here is in, the levels are in French, niveau is stage in English. So at the second stage, right, you have the appropriate geospatial technology that needs to be looked after at the same time, again, as the technical capacity and all these specification standards and protocols that will ensure the quality of the data. And then appear also on the third stage when we look at the core data set. So you have this concept of common georegistry for hosting, maintaining, managing, regularly updating and sharing the core data that we then operationalize strong use case. When it comes to the geospatial data management cycle, I mean, the use of these technologies is among these last step on top, right? From the moment you have compiled, I mean, the compilation, we could argue the compilation also require to some extent to use some of this technology, but more specifically from the moment you are looking at this data and identifying gaps, filling the gaps, and using this data for generating products, as well as updating the data. That's where really the technology comes in. Again, technology is here to support content and use case, right? The technology should not be the elements that drive all of this. The technology, this kind of technology has evolved, of course, a lot over the past 50 years. So since I was born, and even practice. I mean, at the time I started using a geographic information system. We're still at the age where we're using these big digitizing table and workstations to generate layers that we were then manipulating with line of comments, right? While now, of course, GIS software is not only very user-friendly in a desktop environment, but has evolved to be seamlessly passing from the desktop to online to mobile, which is something we were not thinking about at the time when I started using this kind of technology. When it comes to global navigation satellite systems, as you know, I mean, we used to call that GPS because at the time there was only the GPS constellation in the sky. Now there are 4 of them. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I missed, and there's a 5th one already. We have at least 4 constellations right now that allow us to navigate and collect geographic coordinates. And then when it comes to remote sensing, of course, not only is there more satellite in the sky, but the resolution and the type of data that they are able to sense, capture, and give us access to has tremendously evolved over these past 50 years, and will certainly continue to evolve. I mean, let's have a look a bit as a short introduction for each of those technologies, starting with remote sensing, which is really the process of capturing information, right, from physical characteristic of an area by using a sensor, right, by measuring how radiations are being reflected or emitted from the surface of the Earth, and to generate geospatial data out of this, right? So the sensor can be attached to any kind of flying object you can think about, including more and more drones, sense and capture this information. And you have examples here of the kind of derived data from this kind of approach. Of course, real imagery, like what you see in Google Earth, altitude, which is obtained very often using radar sensor, land cover, right? And then also other things like temperature, among other things. So this is about remote sensing. There's plenty of satellites and sensor up there in the sky, as you might know. I mean, what you have here is only 2 images representing those which are under the administration of NASA and ESA, so the American and the European Space Agency. But there is, of course, other ones that are up there, which have been launched by the Chinese, by the Indian, etc. So that there is plenty of sensor and therefore data that is available. This has certainly been, I mean, from an health perspective, apart from GIS, right, Geographic Information System, remote sensing, very early. I mean, you have a set of articles here to illustrate the fact that very early, already in 1994, that's 30 years ago, right? Remote sensing was used trying to identify what was the niche of vectors such as mosquitoes for the propagation of transmission of malaria. And this continues to be largely used in this context. So remote sensing in the health context has been there for quite some time. And there's certainly other articles or things that are unpublished that are older than this. Second technology, which is also based on a camera which is attached to a flying object, which is photogrammetry. But in this case, the idea is to kind of use different angles, right? So pictures taken at different angles in order to be able to get a perspective on the area or the object, which is what is used in topography, right? To help developing the topography, identifying the landscape, and also more and more, as you can also have in apps, in online applications like Google Maps, have 3D views of the environment or the buildings for a particular city. Now, remote sensing and photogrammetry, I mean, there are other indirect applications. We saw some of them during the previous session, right? Like the automatic or semi-automatic extraction of features that are visible from satellite imagery, right? Like roads or buildings, etc. Of course, the use also, of satellite imagery as ground reference to assess and also improve the quality of geospatial data. We look at that also during the last module. And there's also the use of all these data, which is derived from remote sensing and photogrammetry, like elevation or land cover, to analyze accessibility to healthcare, for example, to conduct different type of spatial analysis. So both remote sensing and photogrammetry are generating key geospatial data that are needed to operationalize several of the applications we have been talking about from the beginning of this training, right? We talk about 5 main applications of geospatial data and technologies, which are useful in the micro planning context, in particular, and the public health in general. And these technologies are very present directly or indirectly in this context. The next technology is the global navigation satellite system, right? 3 main applications here. Navigation, of course, everybody has been using certainly its phone to go somewhere. Tracking, which is the capability to be able to follow at a regular interval where a person or a particular object finds itself, which is a method that has been used in different contexts in health, particularly to track actually the teams in the field in relation to immunization, for example, to make sure that these teams have been visiting all the places they are supposed to reach, like it has been the case of the polio eradication campaign in Nigeria. And then the last application, of course, is the collection of geographic coordinates, right? The fields, coordinates which are then used in the context of different applications. So we'll talk today, this is one of the technology on which we're going to spend a bit more time. So in the next session, we will start and look at GNSS in more detail. Next technology, geographic information system. Of course, this is the most known technology. Now, this being said, I mean, I like to separate 2 aspects. We have really the technology itself, the software, right? You talk about the computer system or the computer tool that is being used to manipulate, generate not only data, but also products like thematic map. And there is also a geographic information system. I mean, the term is sometimes also used to refer to the whole information system itself, right? And so where not only do you consider the technology itself, the software, but also what goes with it to make sure that basically you can benefit fully from the technology. That's kind of like going in the direction of the concept of geo-enabled health information system, right? Except that here it's more kind of focusing on some specific aspect, while the HIS geo-enabling framework goes beyond the technology and these different aspects. So we'll look at that in more detail in session 18, the two types of definitions. And then the last technology that is emerging, and I know I will sound a bit biased because I have the privilege to be at the origin of the definition of the concept of common georegistry, but this is really becoming a key element, something that was missing, which was kind of IT solutions which go beyond what you will call a data warehouse or metadata catalog, which is really solutions that help managing the content, right? Really capturing and also, keeping all the geography evolves through time, either when focusing on one particular geographic feature like a health facility. Here you have the example of the National Health Facility Registry here in the Philippines, or when you're looking at that from the perspective of the overall, geography, all the geographic features that define the geography for a particular thematic like health or sustainable development in general, and that requires a different type of platform that will be managing all that content and also simultaneously taking into account the fact that this data is managed by multiple different entities. So we look at both the concept of registry and common georegistry also during the last session today. Okay, I see a question there, which I will address a bit later when we talk about GIS, if that's okay in the Q&A. Thank you, Rajesh. So we'll look at that during the session 18. Now, in the end, of course, something which is very important, and for me, the more important part to remember is technology, and I repeat that several times. Technology is not supposed to support to guide the process or drive the process, right? It's supposed to support that process, and therefore, really, the choice of the technology must be based on clearly defined needs. Which means the choice of the technology should not be the entry point. And many cases in countries where the first question I get when I arrive is which GIS software should be using. This is not the most important entry point question, right? The definition of like what we have done in the previous module, what we have looked at as part of the HIS Geo-enabling framework implementation process, defining the challenge and the needs, and then the geographic dimension of those challenges and needs, and then the product that can be generated to address those needs, the data that is needed, as well as the technical capacity comes before the choice of the technology itself. And also at the end of the day, important to remember that you can have the best software on the planet if your data is of bad quality. The result, what you're going to get out of the application of this technology might look beautiful. I mean, you can do very beautiful map with very low quality data, but this is not going to be very useful to support planning and decision making. Okay, no additional question, and the one from Rajesh for the moment. So let's move to the next session, where we're going to be, the next 3 sessions today. We are going to be looking at 3 specific type of geospatial technology, starting with these global navigation satellite systems. Then we'll look at geographic information system. And at the end, we look at registry and command georegistry. So a global navigation satellite system is a constellation, meaning a group of satellites, right, which is flying above our head. And thanks to their positioning, as well as certain information that they carry and they can exchange with a device on the surface of the Earth, you can then use them to obtain a location, which can be used either for navigating or for tracking, or just to know where you find yourself in the surface of the Earth. Like I was mentioning earlier, there are currently 4 different satellite navigation systems. As far as I know, I don't think there is a 5th one in the pipe. If you are aware about something, please let us know in the chat. These 4 systems are the GPS. This is the oldest one, the global positioning system from the US. After that came the GLONASS system from Russia, Beidou from China, and Galileo, which is the European system. I guess all of you know or have guessed why there are now different NAVIC of India. Oh, thank you so much. I didn't know about this one. Is this a global one also? Is it a more regional or even national one, the NAVIC of India? If you have information, regional. Okay, thank you so much. So NAVIC is an additional one, which is a regional one. The 4 you have here are global ones, right? So as long as the device you're using allows to receive the signal from these 4 constellations, you will be able to use them to get a location. So there are 4 right now, and particularly US, Russia, China, and Europe, because originally the system is developed for military purposes, right, and has been open to the public because of the possibility to do that. But if ever, God forbid, the situation was to be becoming not so comfortable anymore, let's say, most likely the signal is not going to be public anymore, and each of the reason for each of these countries and region to have their own system is, of course, to avoid being dependent from each other in case this situation was to happen. So let's hope this is never going to be happening, but this is the reason behind this. So how does one of these system works? So there are three segments, we call that. There is the control segment, which is basically the base of the operator of the system, which controls the good functioning of the constellation, which is in the sky, maintenance and repair if ever needed. You have the space segment, which is, of course, composed of the satellites themselves. And then there is the user segment, you and I, basically having a device that allows to receive the signal from these different satellites and therefore get a location. So the signal in question is carrying 3 main information. So when your device, your phone, or your GNSS receiver manage to catch this signal from the sky, you will first get the unique identifier for each satellite, right, which allows to know for which satellite you received information. It will also contain what we call the almanac data, which is basically kind of a calendar, right, of where each satellite finds itself at a given moment in time in the sky, because they are having, of course, a specific orbit, which makes them go and be at the same place all the time, I mean, at the same time during the, I guess, a 24-hour period. And then the ephemeris data, which is the precise orbital information that allows basically your device, when receiving multiple signals, to calculate this position on the surface of the Earth. Important to know that there is no need for internet to get a geographic coordinate from these particular systems, right? As you know, there are some ways to also obtain a coordinate using basically your IP address. But here, this is a system which is completely independent from the internet system. So you can find yourself in the middle of nowhere. As long as your phone is working or your device has batteries, you will be able to get basically a location. Now, it's important to understand how this constellation are managing to give you an accurate coordinate, an accurate position on the surface of the Earth. If you were to receive, if your device was to receive only the signal from only one satellite, right? That will not be sufficient, definitely, to calculate the position, because the only information your device will have is a single distance between your device and the satellite in question. So basically, you could find yourself anywhere on the surface of the Earth, of a sphere, sorry, presenting a radius of the distance that has been measured between your device and the satellite. So one signal is not sufficient. If you receive the signal from two satellites, in this case, your position, yourself, your device will find itself at the intersect of the respective sphere, right, attached to each satellite. And if you remember your class, I love this 3D geometry thing I did in college. The intersect between two spheres is basically a circle, right? And so if you have two signals, your device will find itself anywhere along this circle, right, which correspond to the intersect between the two spheres. So again, two signals is not sufficient for you to get a precise location, an accurate location. If you now have received three signals, you will have the intersect between the circle and the sphere. That will give you 2 points, right? So there will be 1 point located on the surface of the Earth. The other one will be in the sky, right? By definition, because the satellites are themselves in the sky. So potentially the device could be knowing, but you could also be in the sky and using your GPS device, right? So there is still an uncertainty. And this is the reason why we always say that you should at least have receiving the signal from 4 satellites to go down to only one possible location. Now, of course, with these 4 constellations in the sky, the situation has changed a lot over the past years. Now you have 10, 20 satellites on top of your head when you take the coordinates. At the time, 20 years ago, that was not always the case. Sometimes you had to wait quite a significant amount of time, depending on where you were finding yourself, until your device was catching at least 4 signals, and therefore in the possibility to give you a coordinate. Now, also, this is not necessarily an issue anymore, again, because of the number of constellations in the sky, but it's important to know that if you have to have an accurate coordinate, right, an accurate location, pairs of geographic coordinates, you obtain that more easily if the satellites are much well dispersed in the sky, right? If they are, for example, you have examples here in relation with a limited number of satellites, and you have the relation between the number of these satellites and their location and the accuracy measure that you get from the instrument. By the way, you remember, I hope from the last module, the difference between accuracy and precision, right? So here we are talking about the shift between the real location and where the location that you were obtaining. By the way, I don't know if you know, but in all devices, and also generally on the apps that you have on your phone, you have these different circles, right? And so the outside circle correspond generally to the horizon, right? Around yourself, you are, your own location is the center, the point, right? That you have here at the center of these circles correspond to your location. The outside circle correspond to the horizon, and the middle circle generally correspond to an angle of 45 degrees in the sky. So when you have an image like this one, where you have 3 satellites basically in the sky, 2, especially one is right on top of you, and the last one is somewhere at the horizon, and you see they are all aligned more or less, and you don't obtain a very good accuracy, positional accuracy for this kind of distribution. Compared to here, the most ideal case being illustrated on this slide, where you have 6 different satellites. They are all more or less 45 degrees compared to your position. And you can see that they are well dispersed around you. And when you have this, is when you obtain what we call a good positional dilution, or dilution of precision, PDOP, and you obtain a much better accuracy measure. So the shift between the reality and the place where you're measured by the device, right, is really much lower, right? So this is the kind of ideal case where you will obtain the best result. But again, when you have suddenly 20 or even more satellites on top of you, it's much easier to obtain a good distribution of them, and therefore you now obtain measures depending on the device you have. Mine go down to 3 meters of accuracy, for example, positional accuracy. What's important to know is that there are potential source of signal errors. The first thing is that the GNSS signal is not going through natural or artificial barriers, right? So if you find yourself inside a building where there is no window, obviously it's going to be very difficult for you to obtain a signal. If you find yourself in the street in the middle of a lot of high-rise building, also you will have a lot of the signals that will be blocked by these buildings. The same can happen if you have mountains around you. So you will want to, of course, try to have place yourself in the most open space possible when you are collecting geographic coordinates. The other important thing to know is that the signal might reflect on surfaces, right? So also when you are in the middle of high-rise building, will not only be masking some of the signals that cannot go through the building, but it might be also that the signal will be reflected on the surface of the building. And because the time that the signal takes to go from the satellite to your device is what is used to measure distance, if the path and therefore the time taken for the signal to reach your device is longer, then the measurements that the device will give you is also an estimated distance that will be longer than it should be if it was in a straight line, right? So you will have also potential errors in terms of positional accuracy due to that. So important to know, good to be always in the most open space possible when collecting coordinates. Now you will say, okay, which device to use? There is plenty of device, any smartphone today. I mean, I don't know if there is any smartphone that do not have a GNSS receiver, right? Specific antenna in the device, maybe certain cheaper version of these, or the old kind of type of phone that we see sometimes, but any smartphone generally will have a GNSS receiver. You still have also the device, the standalone handhelds, right, that you might have used, which I use before smartphone were having GNSS receivers. right? Like the Garmin e-Trex, that's a device I've been using. Still have one in my drawer here, by the way, which have not been used for almost 5 years now, even more maybe. But what is important is that there's a minimum set of requirements that we are recommending to have, whatever is the configuration you are using, right? Either a standalone handheld or a smartphone with an app, requirements which are listed here in terms of the possibility to set the format as well as the map datum. You might remember that from last module, right? The importance, this is the potato model, right, that you need to be able to set, as well as also being able to set distances more than speed, but that could also be useful for navigation. More importantly, is that the app or the device should at least provide 5 decimal place, right? So 5 decimals after the digit, 5 digits after the decimal point. And that is to be able to capture coordinates that have a precision level that goes down to the meter. So 5 and more is really recommended to obtain this level of precision. It's useful. I mean, even if we have that high number of satellites, maybe I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but I always like to make sure that the app I'm using is giving me the number of satellite signal I'm currently receiving, to make sure there is no problem, that suddenly I have a reading that is being based on a low number of signals. And of course, the accuracy measure, the instrumental accuracy measure, to be able to always capture coordinates with the same level of quality, right, in terms of accuracy. Again, the more constellation you can have, that your device will receive, the better, because that would again increase the number of signals. You increase the number of signals, you increase the accuracy, and the probability of having enough satellite on top of you to capture those coordinates. So a lot of options. When it comes to using an apps for a smartphone, either Android or iPhone, again, there is a lot of apps. What we have been using ourselves when it comes to Android is an app called GPS Essentials. It has many more tools that you don't necessarily need to use unless you want to do navigation or other applications. But from the perspective of all the information it gives you, and I'll show you a screenshot of the view you get in GPS Essential in the next slide. It really provides you with all the information that is needed in order to be able to capture geographic coordinates of quality. When it comes to iPhone, and this isn't a free app, by the way, GPS Essential is a free app. When it comes to iPhone, we have been having difficulties to find also free apps that will be providing with the necessary information to ensure the quality of the geographic coordinates you are collecting. The one we have been using recently is called My GPS Coordinates. And I think there's two versions of this. And again, this is an alternative that more and more people are using, an alternative to standalone handheld GNSS-enabled device. Just because you can also do much more with, if you have a tablet or a smartphone, right? You can use that to collecting other kind of information. What I was mentioning earlier, it's important to be able to set units, right, in your device. These units need to match the data specifications that you have set. Also something we look at as part of the geospatial data management cycle during the last module. And then it should allow you to, again, have access to this whole information that you will want to capture in your form to make sure you have coordinates of quality. So here you have an example of a view you obtained from a standalone device, right, from a Garmin, which is giving you the coordinate. You have, again, the satellite view in the sky with the circle I was mentioning earlier, the indication of which constellation are being received, and an accuracy measure, as well as the number of satellite signal that your device is receiving. So you have all the information here that is recommended. And here you have something similar. This is the view you have in the GPS Essential Android app, with again coordinate, positional, instrumental accuracy, where the signal is coming from, again to avoid that you are suddenly taking coordinate using the internet, number of satellite signal, and also the distribution, the dispersion of the satellite in the sky. So again, different ways, same result, to ensure you capture coordinates of quality. We talked about this a bit last time, but from the perspective of collecting geographic coordinates, it's important to emphasize the need to standardize, right, the unit system, the geographic coordinate system in which you are collecting the coordinates. I mean, especially, I mean, I experienced that personally in the emergency context, where there was no agreement with the way units were set among devices from different organizations that were collecting points in the ground. And in the end, it was very difficult to really use all of this data because they were collected using a different approach. So what we are personally recommending is to use decimal degrees, so no projection system, really expressed in latitude and longitude. That's the easiest way the easiest georeferencing method that is universal, that can be projected, that you can use directly in any specific technology. So this is what we recommend to be using. Accuracy and precision, again, just a reminder last time, when you use a GNSS device in the field, very important to agree or decide on the level of accuracy that you will be, the maximum error, positional accuracy error you will be considering when you capture coordinates, because that has a direct link, as you might remember from last time, with the scale of work, right? So if you, for example, collect geographic coordinate with a maximum positional error of 15 meters, that allows you to basically use the data you have collected for a scale which will be around 1 to 25,000 and above. I mean, any other scale behind this. So it's really, we recommend, especially now with the number of satellites you have, is to maximum go for horizontal positional error of 15 meters. So as long as your reading on your device is below that value, then that becomes really to be considered. And then again, I was mentioning earlier, capturing not only, I mean, your device should be providing you with 5 decimals after the digit point, but you should be capturing these 5 decimal in your form, right? So that you reach a level, a precision level down to the meter. So geographic coordinates, no projection, latitude, longitude, so decimal degrees, horizontal accuracy, horizontal error, not above 15 meters, and definitely going down to 5 digits after the decimal point to reach a precision down to the meter. Now, there are many different ways, right, that you can combine your device with additional, I mean, the use of your device and your app with additional, I will say, parameters or additional help to guide the collection of geographic coordinates in the field, because you want to avoid, of course, having to send people again in the field in case the coordinates have not been captured correctly. So in the context of this particular guidance document from the Help GeoLab, which you will find on the GeoLab website, the link at the bottom here, or you will find also in the Google Drive for this training workshop, we have identified 12 different methods. 9 of them using a GNSS-enabled device, 3 other ones not using a GNSS-enabled device. And these methods are organized here according to the level of scalability of the method, as well as the level of accuracy that you will obtain through the use of these different methods. So you can decide, depending on your need, depending on what you want to do in the context of your project, decide which method is the most appropriate, taking these 2 elements into account. The other very important element, and which is very, very often forgotten, I've seen so many cases where people are just trained quickly, sent in the field without any SOP, meaning different person following different steps and leading to very different quality in the the geographic coordinates they obtain. So it's really important to develop and to follow a standard operating procedure that should cover at least the elements here, right? Not only the step that needs to be followed, but also a reminder for the user on how to use the device, if it's not their own personal device, as well as how to configure that device, right? And how to use the different elements that comes with it as part of the data collection process, including, for example, the form that will be used by the data collector. It's also important not only to have an SOP for the data collectors, but also an SOP for the supervisors, so they should know what is it that they should be looking into if they were to do some spot check in the field, for example, to check the way the data collectors are operating the device to collect coordinates. And as I was mentioning earlier, I mean, there's actually a set of things that needs to be done before data collection so that your data collection is really successful. That doesn't necessarily only apply to the collection of geographic coordinates, of course, but specifically here, before the data collection, it's really important to really prepare all the material that is needed and to then select and train the data collector and the supervisor. I mean, the training part is critical here, and we always spend enough really a real exercise that we do with data collectors before sending them in the field, and we make them even redo this exercise several times if ever the coordinates they capture are not presenting, and not only the coordinates but also the other information they are supposed to capture is not captured in a perfect way. So this is really maybe a little bit longer in terms of training. You spend 1 day instead of half a day on making sure that they will be using the device correctly for collecting the geographic coordinates, but it's in the long term, it's really a very good investment that will ensure that you don't have to send them again in the field to collect those coordinates. The other thing that is very important also to do before data collection, right, in relation to the preparation of the material, once you have selected the method, right, I mean, you have adjusted the data collection form and all of these, made it electronic if needed, is really to configure and test the device before they are being used in the field. Test the quality of the receiver itself, because it happens regularly that one device or one particular brand of device has a poor quality GNSS receiver that might lead either into a regular shift of the coordinates, or instead of giving the coordinates where they're supposed to be, they are shifted by 200 meters, 300 meters, or you could have something like this, right? I mean, generally, that's the way we do it. We choose a particular landscape. We get the different device in front of that landmark, sorry, not landscape, a landmark that you can see from satellite imagery, right? You get the device in front of that landmark, you collect several coordinates with the same device, and you then overlay the coordinates you have collected to the satellite imagery to check if indeed the points are falling within the vicinity of the landmark you have selected, sorry. If you obtain something like this with a particular device, there might definitely be an issue with the receiver, as long as everything has been set correctly, right? And therefore, you may want to not consider this device for data collection. So very important also to do this, then finding when someone is in the middle of the field data collection, that all the coordinates that are being shared are presenting an issue. And so this is really, I mean, all these points, what you can do at the before data collection exercise is really what's going to make the difference between collecting your accurate coordinates or obtaining coordinates that it will be difficult to use or to even make sense of, right? Because they are falling completely outside of, for example, the district where the objects that you're located, for which you take the coordinates are located. So really good to take the time to do that. And again, training, emphasize this once again, really important to spend the time with the data collectors, make sure that everybody has understood what needs to be done, and that, again, during the practice, everybody reach the level of quality that is expected for the data collection process. So this is for before the data collection. Now, during the data collection itself, it's really important to make sure that the data collectors are following the SOP, what they have practiced during the training, and they are definitely worth to have some methods implemented to verify during the data collection if everything is happening correctly. You can have, depending on the context, right, and the area and the resources, you can have that done as on-site spot checks, right, to check the accuracy and precision, as well as the level of completeness of the data collection operated by the data collector. But I personally prefer to put a system in place that can be a remote system where on a regular basis, either the people in the field, depending on the kind of forms they are using, are submitting the coordinates they have been collecting, or if you use something which is an electronic digitalized form that allows to have a direct synchronization with an online database, of course, get these coordinates on a regular basis and check them remotely, and in order to rapidly identify if there could be a problem either with the device, because there is a constant shift in the coordinates, or a problem with the process that the data collector is following. And therefore, you could contact the person, correct, and adjust what is needed. That avoids for you to lose a lot of time and resources to recollect the coordinates for which there was a problem. And then after, of course, the data collection, like any other data collection process, important to make sure that the data that has been collected is organized and structured in a way that it can be used. Sometimes that means also the integration into a master list. For example, if the campaign was connected to collecting the geographic coordinate of health facilities, right? So these coordinates should be reintegrated after verification and validation into the master list of health facilities. And important, as we talk about this during the last module, not to forget that to include the data catalog and the metadata worksheet also in the spreadsheet you will have created to store the data that was collected during the field data collection exercise. So to summarize, when it comes to global navigation system, importance to choose the appropriate device, right, and to check the quality of the receiver for using that in the field. Importance to have a pre-established SOP, right, that will not only include the different steps that the data collector needs to follow, but also all the other information that could be useful to them, right? Including how to operate the device or to troubleshoot if there is a particular problem, etc. Making sure that high accuracy and high precision coordinates are being collected, taking the time to invest in a good training for both data collectors and data supervisors, right? Having a monitoring process in place during data collection, and then ensure that the data that has been collected is properly stored and documented. Again, these are not specific to the collect of geographic coordinate, but there is also applicable here. One thing, of course, to be careful about, and which is the reason why for some survey, they have been randomly moving the geographic coordinates when conducting household surveys, for example, is the fact that when you are collecting very accurate geographic coordinates, this allows you to find someone, right? So there could be potential ethical confidentiality issues in relation to that if you are giving access to these coordinates. Okay, let me see. No, there's no other question. Again, we'll take the question I have for the next session, because we're going to be covering the geographic information system. If there is no question, we just reached the hour, so it's time for us to do our usual 10-minute break so that you have a chance to just stretch the legs, get something to drink. And so we'll meet again, let's say in 8 minutes. So it's going to be easier, 10 past the hour, depending on the time zone where you're locating yourself. And we'll continue with the next session that will deal with geographic information system. So talk to you in 8 minutes from now. Thank you. According to Mr. Thank you, Alexandre. Welcome back for this second part of the module today. In the next session, we are going to be looking at another technology, geospatial technology, which is certainly the most well-known and used technology. I'm talking about the geographic information system. As I mentioned earlier, two ways to look at this. I'll focus mainly on the first one, right, which is the software part, the technology itself. But of course, sometimes you will hear people using GIS really making reference to the system, to the information system. So it's important to make sure that your people are clear about which one you are referring to. So when it comes to the technology itself, I mean, in GIS as a software, there are actually different type of GIS softwares. There is the desktop version, right, which is the most used type of GIS software, and it also the one that will be giving you access to the widest number of features or capabilities, right? The most used type, I mean, software of this kind are QGIS as open source, and or ArcMap, ArcMap and ArcGIS Pro from the Esri company as a proprietary application. By the way, ArcMap is soon to be decommissioned. It's not going to be supported anymore by Esri. So we're all kind of slowly moving in the direction of ArcGIS Pro. Then you have online GIS applications, which are also offering a wide variety of capabilities and features, but maybe not as much as what you will get in the desktop version, right? But all of this is offered, of course, in an online environment. Again, you have proprietary and open source solution in this case. What's interesting, what has become interesting in the recent years when it comes to this online technology is that You can also use that as a bridge, right, between the work you will do on your desktop and what you will also get in a mobile environment, right? You could have people in the field collecting information or adjusting certain data based on what they see on the ground, all of that circulating through an online environment, and then still you having access to these data that is online on your desktop and therefore benefiting from the full capability of a desktop GIS software. These kind of applications can generally be deployed either in a cloud environment or on a local server. Of course, there are specific costs associated to each of them. And then we have what we call GIS extensions, which are additional tools or capabilities, right, that are not necessarily integrated in the original core desktop GIS software, and which are required to operationalize certain application or functionalities. These can, and actually you can find these, there are different names, I mean, they call extension on the Esri side. They are called plugin in the context of QGIS. They are added to the core applications to enable these application and functionalities. I have an example here of GIS or extension, spatial analyst, which allows to deal with all the raster format data in an Esri environment, for example. And then you have also, I mean, what is really important to remember is that what I would call a real GIS software allows you to perform the four main functionalities that you see here, right? So manage the geospatial data in the sense of editing, creating, right? There's data that allows you to create thematic maps, which, as you certainly remember, is one of the applications we have been looking at in the context of HIS Geo-enabling, one of the most used application. It allows to also conduct spatial analysis, right, where you are using basically geography as one of the factors that can explain relationships that exist between different features that are on your map. And then you have spatial modeling, which consists in applying a model, given model in a spatially distributed way, right? So software and applications that are not performing all the above is something I will not consider a GIS software, right? So it's only when you can basically do all of these that I will consider that as a GIS software. Now, that means that not everything that generate maps is a GIS software, and there's no problem with this, right? I mean, you have tools such as DHIS2 or Tableau, which are more database management system, which provide thematic mapping interface, right? And I mean, this is well recognized by this tool, and this is why also more and more bridges are established between these tools and the real GIS software like QGIS or Esri's product. And actually this bridge, like for example, for those that are using DHIS2, this bridge exists now for both, right? So you can be using your data, generating data, collecting data in the DHIS2 environment, and it's possible to then much more dynamically basically go into now GIS software like these two. And then you have online, what I will call online mapping applications like Google Map or Bing Map, right, which are mainly used for visualization. I mean, it's true, you can display, you can add points, etc. But you can't do really all the application you will do into a real GIS software environment. And then you have GIS-based applications, so applications that are standalone and that are being developed to perform a specific set of functionalities. Access mode is one of those type of GIS-based applications, which is a free software that allows you to do different kind of accessibility-related analysis and use geospatial data to do this, generate output under the form of geospatial data that can then be used again in the GIS software. But the application itself is not a GIS software on its own, all right. So the real GIS software, I mean, there are other ones, but the one that are mostly the most used nowadays are the Esri products I was mentioning earlier, which is the most complete versatile ecosystem, I would say, off the shelf that you can have access to, that allows really sorry, that's my French comes out again, in a very easy way, passing from the online, desktop, mobile environment. So that's a proprietary technology, but as I will show you earlier, there are free and even reduced cost license and packages that are available for the health sector. There is a new set of package which is actually available since just a few days, and I have a slide on this a little bit later. And then you have QGIS, which is the open source applications. Definitely very good. I mean, you have a lot of functionalities. There are sometimes some, I mean, like you have in any open source, right? I mean, the question of the technical support is also something to really take into consideration when looking into the two. And I'll come back a little bit more in the next slide. Free open source can do a lot of things, especially when it comes to thematic mapping. A little bit, I will say, limitations when it comes to the advanced type of things you could be doing, but depending on the work you are doing, there is already a lot of things that can be done with this. And actually, I mean, on this whole debate and in relation to the question which is based, which is in the Q&A from Ngussier, thank you for this question, about which GIS software is preferable. Actually, this all depends on the context, right, on your need and also the resources that are available. So I give few examples here just as a starting point, but this is really, I mean, the whole thinking should be first, what are the needs? What is it that I am trying to achieve from a geographic perspective before then identifying which software or set of softwares are basically useful. As I mentioned here, very often the solution is in the combination between the two. It's not choosing one to another in a given country. More and more, depending on the context, depending on the use case, you will go for a proprietary solution. So, for example, if you are managing an emergency operations center that needs to be operational 24/7, where you need to have access to an hotline right away. If there is a problem, you will go more in the direction of the proprietary solution. If you are an environment where you're just creating some thematic map on an occasional basis at the central level or at the subnational level, you can definitely go for an open source solution, right? And again, so really what's really important, again, as I've mentioned several times, focus on the content, on the skills, the technical skills, right, of your staff, and then the processes that is behind what will generate a product of quality. And then your technology comes in to basically support. So to answer the question in the chat, there is no preferable GIS software. It all depends on the context and your needs and resources. I wanted to finish by giving you some additional resources. First of all, starting with QGIS, the latest stable version, at least the last time I checked a few weeks ago, was version 3.34. I mean, that's something also, there is constantly new version being released, which is not always easy for us as trainers, because we constantly have to adjust things a bit. But good things here. You have a good user guide. You have training manuals. You have example, etc. So you have a lot of material existing for you to start using QGIS for your own particular context. And there is also different QGIS courses. You find some YouTube videos, and there is also some material that is always being made available online. I mean, it's changed very often, unfortunately. That's one of the difficulty. You sometimes have some university or some project that put something up, and then after some time, unfortunately, it's not available anymore. And by the way, I hope these links are still valid. I checked them last week. I hope it's still valid this week. So that's for QGIS. When it comes to Esri, I was mentioning earlier, I mean, this is proprietary. Yes, there is a cost, but Esri in the recent decade has launched, first of all, this global public health grant, which give access to free licenses to Ministry of Health of 111 countries. And then after that, very reduced cost. You have here the list of what is included. You have the website. I mean, I invite you to have a look at the website to see if your country is eligible for this, if this is the technology you want to try, or something for which you really have a specific need. And just now, I just actually find the announcement today. So it might be just fresh from the oven, is a new program launched by Esri, which is called Geospatial Enablement Program for Global Public Health, which also, I mean, is complementing the grant. It's giving access, it seems, to kind of more advanced type of software package, right? If you want to go, I think, in the direction of what we call an enterprise type of setting. And it also includes training and services, right? So the grant gives you access to the software, which is for free, but there is no training or services attached to that. It seems that this particular program is itself giving you access to these additional resources. So you can have a look, you can contact as well, you can contact them. The health, there is a specific entity which is Health and Human Resources group inside Esri that has been very active over the past decade now, for which you can find there is a LinkedIn group, there is a hub, there is many information dedicated to health, a lot of white paper. Este, which is at the head of the group, has been very active in developing papers, and there's also events taking place. So if you search for this particular Health and Human, I think it's called Health and Human Resources group, you will be able to register and also being informed when there is events that you can attend. There's also training resources. A big part of this is free. You can access these. And we have also developed a set as part of the Health Geo Lab, develop a set of starter kits, I mean, simplified documentation that allows you to have an idea of this kind of technology, and also help you to migrate, for example, if you have been an ArcMap user, migrate to ArcGIS Pro. Because again, as I mentioned, ArcMap soon will not be maintained by Esri anymore. Now, just 2 slides about GIS as an information system. Again, this is really focusing on technology, people, processes, content, right? So it's some of the component of the HIS Geo-enabling framework, but that's a concept that is used sometimes to make reference to more than the software, right? But the setup you could have in an organization as part of the information system that recognize the importance of the geographic dimension, and therefore as a strong geographic component to it. So in this context, we are really looking at, again, data, software, equipment, people, and methods, and really, I mean, this is this is the first representation I have seen of a GIS when I started almost 25 years ago, where the geographic information system was represented by a set of circles. The inner one was the content, the database, and the GIS itself as a system was kind of allowing to interact with this content, right? So creating content or using some of this content to generate product. And then you will having people and technology equipment there to support the generation of this content or the use of this content. What I like really, and we have lost that in the more recent representation of the GIS, which is kind of a star where you put content as one of the branches, is that in this representation, once again, the content really is key. And this is what really geo-enable the information system. Okay, I think this is what I wanted to tell you about, geographic information system. I don't see any new question. I see some exchange in the chat about someone who has developed some GIS-based application. Thank you for sharing this. Please don't hesitate if you have other things you would like to share to include that in the chat. Now, in the meantime, so we'll move to the last session for today. So this third type of geospatial data spatial technology, sorry, I wanted to cover today as part of this module, which is linked to this concept of registry and common georegistry, which is something which is of particular interest to me, because this, for me, this has long been a kind of a gap in the whole suites of technologies, and also in relation to all these platforms that have been born over the past decades that were really useful for sharing, right? The data that was finalized, like a final data set with metadata, right? So this metadata catalog, all these data warehouse where final product were basically located, but there was a need for something in between that will be storing and managing the content as it evolved through time. So these two concepts, and the concept of registry is really important in the HIS geo-enabling framework. It's really pivotal, I will say. It has at the same level as the master list and the other geospatial data. And it's really there to ensure that this content is of quality and is maintained also through time. So timeliness is one of these dimension of data quality we have been looking at, right? And geography evolves through time constantly, and there is a need to make sure that you can look at the and preserve this evolution of geography through time and use it as part of the applications that you are looking at. So that's where these concepts are coming from, and ideally should be deployed or developed, maintained as part of the geo-enablement of the health information system. So the concept of registry is really to serve as a container, right? If we look at the master list, you remember we discussed master list during the previous module as really one of these key elements that support the quality of the data and the information product you can generate. So the registry is an IT solution that allows to store, to manage, to validate, to update, and share the master list for one specific geographic feature or geographic object, right? So it serves as the container for this master list. You have an example here, I mentioned it already earlier, you have the link here of the National Health Facility Registry that has been developed by the Department of Health here in the Philippines, which is an online application used by the DOH for storing, not only storing, but also operationalizing the updating mechanism of this master list, right, in connection with the different provinces in the country. So again, content management system container that manage a single master list. But the reality is that in public health, and we look at that last time, right? We look at understanding the geography of the health system. There's many geographic features, many geographic objects that forms this ecosystem, right? There's not only health facilities, there are administrative units, health unit in some countries, right? Villages or settlements, vaccination point, etc., etc. And all these features are connected to each other, right? I mean, they are all at the surface of the earth. There is different relationship between them, and there is a need to be able to handle all of them in parallel. And all of these change through time. So there was a need to come up with another concept that will allow to manage all of these in parallel so that you ensure not the quality for each separated geographic features, but consistency among all of them as well. And this is where the concept of common georegistry is born. Again, as a container, as an LT solution, which do the same thing, host, manage, regularly update and share, but not one, but all the master list, all the associated hierarchy, so meaning a relationship between this geographic object and also the geospatial data for these geographic objects that are core, I mean, not only to health, I mean, it's born, the concept is born from the health sector, but the idea is to really look at all the geography that is there and supporting in relation to development in general. Right, so unlimited number of geographic features, multiple organizations, because of course, different geographic features mean under the curation mandate of different organizations, being able to handle changes over time, and also accessible by any information system, right? So that each information system could be having access to this geography as it evolves through time. And again, because it's cross-sectoral, this was designed as an IT solution that will be supporting the national spatial data infrastructure, right? So all the sector to really promote for one geography used by everybody. This concept is born in Cambodia back in 2017, which led to the development of a first guidance document that was defining what a common georegistry is about, which was released also the same year. We had discussions with different providers of solutions, including the University of Oslo for the HIS2, to see if a particular IT solution was existing already off the shelf and providing all the functionality of a common georegistry. As this was not the case, we had the opportunity as part of a project that was financed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the SME project, to work at developing a specific IT solution called GeoPrism Registry, which is the first and, as far as we know, only IT solution right now off the shelf that is complying with the concept of common georegistry. Now, the lessons learned from this process have led to a second release of the CGR guidance, for which we have the link here back in 2022, and that still serves as the reference for defining what a common georegistry is about. So the concept, really, the idea is that the governmental institutions that have the mandate over the different master list and geospatial data are managing all this content that is hosted in the common georegistry, right? It's also updated and shared from this common georegistry, and that allows to have a common and official geography, right, over time, that is then used by all the ministries for their own purpose, and as such will geo-enable applications, which are the ones we have been looking at as part of the benefit of the geo-enablement. So again, this is a solution that contributes directly to the geo-enablement of not only of the health information system, but also beyond from a cross-sectoral perspective. There are different settings. I mean, that I'm not going to go into detail, but there are different models that can be looked into in passing from single registries, right? One registry per geographic features, right? And how you need to basically synchronize the information among all these registries, and then also synchronize them with all the different information systems that each program should have. So that's one model on one side, which of course requires a lot of exchange, a lot of also maintenance, because for each of these registry, you have to have, it's a specific app with their own administrator, their own maintenance, and then going towards a model which is the one we have been aiming at with the common geo-registry, where you have only one registry to maintain. You have directly the exchange that is ensured with the different information system through an interoperability layer, an API bus, and it's therefore much easier to scale up. But of course, there are different models in between that are possible, also depending on the registry for which you need basically to maintain a master list, right? Certain master list, like patient master list or the health staff master list, might have a certain sensitivity, and you might want to have that in a separated registry, while all the master list and hierarchies and geospatial that define the geography of the health sector could be managed together into a common geo-registry. But we are kind of working at promoting this particular model that you have here on the right side of the slide. When it comes to what the CGR, both the CGR or single geographic object registry, I mean HFRS, sorry, stand for Health Facility Registry Service, for example, so for registry for health facilities, serve the same strategic outcome, right? And these strategic outcomes are not defined in relation to programs because they are supposed to serve all the programs, right? They are more expressed in terms of the benefits they are providing to the health sector in relation to the management of data, the standardization, the quality of the data, the accessibility of this information across all the information system, and of course, the management, the efficient management of resources, right? Because by having one single list or in one single place used by everybody, you reduce duplication of effort, and you are therefore saving cost. So all of these strategic outcomes, right, are applicable to both of them. And by the way, they are captured, these are captured in the new toolkit, which is about to be released, and we're going to talk about this in a moment. But just to highlight these, and also to mention that the technical outcomes are also the same, right? That you are looking at a single geographic feature registry or a multiple geographic feature common geo-registry. The idea is really to provide the necessary functionality, again, to store, manage, and share this data, right? So same technical outcome, you can actually, we consider that as being the business outcome of this kind of technology, right? And what is really, when we look at both, I mean, kind of in conclusion, the difference between the two is really linked to the content they are looking in, they are managing, right? I mean, a health facility registry service, for example, will manage just the health facility, again, master list, the common geo-registry multiple. So a common geo-registry can be used to manage one single feature master list, but the other way around is not possible. So this is part of the, I mentioned all of this because this is part of the kind of strategic discussion that should be taking place as part of, for example, the digitalization process in countries. Right now, for example, we're having a project in Cambodia where, as part of the digitalization, we really want to make sure that the geographic dimension is taken into account, and there is an IT solution like a registry, a common geo-registry, which is accessible to all the information systems to ensure the same geography across all the these programs to support planning and decision making. Just few words for you. You can go and have a look at this common georegistry guidance, which is actually in the Google Drive as well. You have just the content here. I'm not going to go into detail into this, but maybe highlighting that you have these functional requirements that have been defined and that are documented. There's actually 93 functional requirements which have been defined for a particular IT solution to be considered as a common georegistry. And this is the base of what has been used, for example, to develop the GeoPrism registry IT solution I was mentioning earlier. There's another important document that I just mentioned, which is about to be released, which is this Health Facility Registry Service Toolkit, which is born from a joint effort between WHO and UNICEF, which builds on some RUS guidelines released by WHO back in 2017 again. Both the common georegistry and also the work there initiated around the same time. This led to a WHO initiative, the Geolocated Health Facility Data Initiative, and as part of the activities of this initiative is a specific working group that has been looking at defining the minimum requirements for an IT solution to be recognized as aligned with the concept of Health Facility Registry Service. So this toolkit will soon be released, but is currently being tested in countries, including Cambodia. And it will contain basically a process, it does contain a process that helps countries to identify what are the, not only from the perspective of the solution, but also make reference to the enabling environment to actually, again, the HIS geo-enabling framework, right, on what are the elements that should be in place to sustain, right, the establishment and long-term maintenance and management of a registry, and help also provide tools to help identify which IT solution could be the most appropriate one to serve as a health facility registry service in the country. So it's really organized as a process to guide countries in this regard. When it comes to health facility registry services, the number of requirements is lower, simply because we are talking single geographic feature, right? Not multiple organization, etc. So the functional is only, means already quite significant, but there are 24 functional requirements which have been defined for the concept of a facility registry service, and then 16 non-functional requirements, all provided with criticality level, which can be adjusted depending on the context. And actually, the non-functional requirements are also applicable to the concept of common georegistry. Okay, that's what I wanted to mention to you today in relation to these three technologies. I hope that was useful. Again, don't hesitate to use the Google form if you have any questions that you would like to ask. Last thing I have to do is to share with you the schedule and agenda for the last module, the sixth and last module. So we'll go back to the HIS geo-enabling framework process implementation and talk more specifically about the development of the action plan once you have basically performed the assessment and you have identified gaps across the 9 elements of the HIS geo-enabling framework, then this is used as the starting point for defining strategies to fill these gaps and also developing the action plan. So we will be basically looking into that before doing a recap a bit of the resources that were shared in the context of this workshop. And I just have to thank you so much for your attention today and look forward to see you again in 2 weeks from now. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you all.